This is the Healey Brothers Show.
We have a special guest today on the Healey Pod. We have Chuck Benfer from Pamela Broadcasting, the COO, the big man on campus there. So thanks for joining us on the pod. And we got James Barrett, our general manager at Healey Hyundai, and then myself, our host, Jason Healey. So Chuck, if you just want to give a little background on yourself, how you came to work at Pamela Broadcasting, running all those companies, and then we'll get started here.
Yeah, well, I've been in radio for 35 or 36 years. I actually got into radio. I was working for a car dealership, and in addition to selling, I was also helping with their advertising, and I was buying a lot of radio. And through that, I met a lot of people, and I actually started my radio career as a salesperson for K104. And then I had the opportunity to go to work for Rob Dyson and Mike Harris at WPDH in that group. And in those days, radio stations, we only owned one AM and one FM station because of regulations. And then Rob Dyson was one of the first ones to have two FM radio stations and an AM station. So I went to work for him because I could make more money. And that is really where my career took off, where I really learned how to be an operator in radio, how I learned how to be a broadcaster, and use my marketing background and business management background to the benefit of a lot of advertisers locally. And then I just, went on from there. So,
all right. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Pamela Broadcasting? What's under it? Like what the consumers would know from it? Because Pamela Broadcasting, I don't think many people. Yeah. The consumer doesn't really know what it is. So.
Yeah, most people don't know Pamela. What they know are K104 or WHUD or BPM here in the Hudson Valley, the Peak down in Westchester. We actually own 27 radio stations in the Hudson Valley, Albany, Glens Falls, and Rutland, Vermont. I'm in the process of, we're working on acquiring a few more groups so that we can expand our portfolio, because this is a good time to actually buy radio if you can, get the deals done right and have staffing, which is very difficult. So we're a big media company. Also, though, we have a couple car dealerships. We have a hotel. We have some other commercial property stuff. So the business is quite a business.
Yeah, it's a pretty big business, and I would have never guessed that. I didn't know all those were connected. I think we learned something new. We were just chatting before this, so yeah. I think it was definitely something different.
That's a huge advantage that I have over a lot of people in media, though, because the auto business, which I'm close to, I've always loved the auto business. You know that. I spent a lot of time working with your dad, with your uncle, with John Kerner. Yep. And I am intimately involved in a lot of the business of the automotive side of the business. I love that, but the more different businesses you can have your hands on, the better the understanding of what's going on in the market. So people will complain about this or people will complain about that. But if I happen to be meeting with a deli owner, or just this morning I met with a restaurant owner, club owner, and I was talking to him about the challenges in his business, which were different, candidly, than what my thought was going into the meeting.
Yeah, so it gives you like a pulse on the actual consumer, because radio is kind of hard to judge. You're always on and stuff like it's difficult to kind of judge radio.
Right. And if you just read headline news from one side or the other, it's like it's not actually what's actually happening on the ground. And to me, that's the most important part of running a business, is understanding what's actually happening versus what the perception of what might be happening is. So.
Yeah. I think he's the first one to tell you what's happening on the ground.
Right. Hey, how do you pick which of these groups that you decide to want to invest in? Is it do they have like the wood, like K104 has the Woodman? Does each of these groups need to have like a higher level personality in order to have a following? Is it about advertising revenue? What goes into it?
Yeah, so the stations have unique personalities, and somebody like Woodman is very dynamic and very recognized, and he has generational listening. So, people that grew up with me, may have started listening to him when they were at a certain age. Not that he's my age; he's younger than me. But then their children listen, then their children's children listen, and Nick was telling us that he was listening to Woodman on the school bus, right? And there are still kids today that listen to Woodman on the school bus.
And Nikki's a baby.
Yeah, Nicky was on the school bus about a year and a half.
Yeah,
so not that long.
Yeah,
but that's so. To your point, with somebody like Woodman or on WHUD, Mike Bennett's been on that radio station since 1976. So there's heritage, there's familiarity, and we gave away tickets to a Renegades game on HUD a week ago, and the family sent us a picture of them at the game, and they're your age, Jay. It's like, and congratulations on your baby.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
It's really exciting, to see that kind of stuff and to see the interaction with younger people. Because, for the most part, what happens with radio is, we're not just a playlist. It's what we have to do to differentiate ourselves in the community. We're not just a playlist of music. We play good music for people that, commonly will like these kinds of
But that's why you also have the different radio stations to have all the different genres, right?
Right. But then you have to have entertainment, you have to have personalities, you have to have people, that kind of hang on to the listeners, I would say, I guess we could talk about it later, but I would say one of our greatest challenges in radio is not the size of the audience, because in the Hudson Valley, the audience that listens to Radio Weekly is about the same as it's always been. The challenge
that just amazes me. I know I battle with you guys all the time in marketing on that. So
yeah, it's just over 92%. According to the last survey, it's just over 92% of the community in the Hudson Valley listens to radio on a weekly basis. They don't listen for the same amount of time as they used to. And so that's our challenge. Our challenge is to figure out how can we get people to listen to us longer, to spend more time with us. And, COVID hurt us in many ways, but then COVID helped us in many ways. It hurt us in that, boy, the people weren't driving, right? And radio's biggest consumption time is inside the car. So it pointed out a lot of the weak spots in our plan and how we can build on our products and the services and the elements that we provide. But at the same time, it proved the strength of the companionship and the role that we really should play in being able to disseminate information, being able to tell people in a timely fashion what needs to happen.
So why is the Hudson Valley, our area, so different? Why is radio still so strong? I can't get a grasp on it, and I'm sure James is the same way, because when I get in the car, granted I'm commuting a little further, I listen to a podcast, and that's like 90% of my ride, or I'm listening to or I'm on the phone for work or something like that, whatever it is. And James, you want to touch on what you're doing in the car?
Well, I think, I think in the morning, people kind of want a mixture of things, right? They want to hear some music. They want to hear a little news. They want to hear a little
weather or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, they want to be entertained. So I think a lot of these morning shows have still really been strong because it gives a good mixture of all of those things, where it's not just the monotonous monotony of I'm listening to somebody else speak in a specific way about a specific thing each time. You got to have a mixture. And as he's talking about the business, we were talking about how similar a lot of businesses are. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you have music and you need to figure out ways to differentiate the other things. As a car dealership, we sell cars. Mm-hmm. But how do we differentiate that? By the people, what the personalities are, how do we entertain people or make them feel a certain way?
How do we communicate?
That's all of there's so many similarities in two different businesses that you really didn't realize until Chuck mentioned it.
So radio's never had 100% of the audience, right? Radio's never had 100% of the community. It's never been, when I started in radio, it was 94%. Now it's 92%, right? We've never had 100%. People have other interests. That's why there are 8-track decks in cars, or cassette players in cars, or CD players in cars. People listen to books on tape before they listen to podcasts. So I've always recognized that there's other forms of entertainment. I just need to have the best radio station that's out there, because there's a lot of people, frankly, our lives are different than the average person's out there, right? At least the three of us in this room live a different lifestyle than probably 85% of the people in the country. So what we do is different than what everybody else is. And one of the greatest things, and you probably have this experience with the number of car dealerships you have, right? I don't really have one kind of music that's my favorite kind of music. I don't really default to I'm a country guy or a rock guy. It doesn't really matter to me. I really couldn't care less, because I just want to make sure if we're going to have a rock station, it's going to be the best rock station. Or if I'm going to have a top 40, it's going to be the best top 40. It's going to be the most compelling. It's going to be the most entertaining. It's going to be the most interactive, so that we can hold on to the people that are going to be there. And that's how we win. What really radio has had a problem with is consolidation. And then the influx of public money and private investment money, the hedge fund money and stuff like that, where people that are controlling the purse strings only care about the return on their investment. And radio is a good business, right? Like the car business is a good business. But you can make a little bit of money on a whole bunch of people, or you can make a lot of money on a couple people, right? Our business model is let's get the most different people involved. Let's be able to have the biggest audiences, have the biggest, and maximize the amount of entertainment and music that we're providing, and give the most back to the community.
Do you think your community events, your community, I guess, the way you guys work and how small knit that small town feel that Hudson Valley has, I think that's what we always focus on when we're marketing to our users. Hudson Valley is different than the rest of the state of New York. It really is. It's not New York City. It's not all the way upstate. Is that like your focus of, hey, we're going to just deliver our message to our local community, the small town feel?
Yeah, so every community is a small community, and it's part of the point of having these big consolidators, right? You can't do radio in New York City like you do it in the Hudson Valley, right? And the thing that makes the Hudson Valley great is that it's a giant community. I've had the benefit in my career having, worked for a number of companies. I've traveled to markets all over the country. I've been coast to coast and border to border, and large markets and small markets. And one thing that I can always say about the Hudson Valley is that the people here are really closely knit together. There's never a time where I've seen somebody say that they needed help where a whole bunch of people didn't raise up their hands and give them a hand. We had a thing happen a couple weeks ago. There was a veteran of the Vietnam War who passed away. He had no family, nobody around. He died in hospice in Orange County, and we got a call from somebody, and they said, we'd like some people to show up to his service because they were doing a full military burial right here in Fishkill. So we put it on the radio. Other stations put it on the radio. There were hundreds of people showed up for a complete stranger's funeral, right? They took the time out of their day, and it was literally a few hundred people went to the Fishkill Cemetery to say thank you and to send off a soldier who, sacrificed his time and, part of his life for our country. I don't know that you find it anywhere else, right? And
yeah, that's what we always say. It's amazing how close knit our community is. Whether there is bickering, obviously, like every community, but it is a small town. Everyone knows each other. Yeah. Like James knows someone that I know no matter what before we met, or someone you meet randomly. They know each other, and it still amazes me that radio is so prevalent, because you hear everything on the news and media like, hey, the radio's like, it's definitely not dying in our area. And I go through every year, we go through the same testing and all that stuff. And I think a lot of it has to do with your community initiatives of you going out there doing small things, whether it's a small event for the military or helping a school. It goes so much further in our area than anywhere else. Yeah. And I just truly believe that.
The reason why I left the last company, I left them, I told them, I didn't agree with them philosophically, that I believe that we're doing it this way, is because when I started running that group, there was 126 employees there. And then when I left, there were 25. Right, so there's 100 jobs lost in this little area, right? In order for our economy to work, we have to put jobs in our economy. We have to have people working. Henry Ford said, if we're going to have you build the car, we want to make it so you can afford the car, right? That was the whole idea. Everybody should be able to participate. Well, if you're eliminating jobs and you're not supporting the community, then the community is not going to support you. Right, we can't be a parasitic, establishment inside this community. And I'll say it about Pandora and Spotify and SiriusXM and Apple Music. They're never going to be at the parade in Wappingers Falls. They're never going to be at a ribbon cutting at a car dealership. They're never going to be at a baseball game for a little league team. They're never going to show up at a high school dance. That's what our business does. That's what your business is doing, right? We're involved inside our communities, and that should get the community to respond more positively to us.
James just being a member at a golf club, I swear, I think 80% of the people buy Healey cars just because he's there engaging with the community on a daily basis.
Well, I
am pretty awesome. But I do.
James does win championships too there. So.
No, but it is an important thing, that club is, golf brings us all together. Mm-hmm. But getting to know people and understand that everybody is different, and what my job is to, obviously, I'm a very outgoing person. I'm very friendly with everybody there, and because of that relationship, it's almost like an obligation.
Right.
I always want to share if I have a friend that is in business in some way, I want to offer them. I want to do business with them. I want. That's part of being a friend. That's part of. I think is, and I wouldn't expect everybody to feel that way, but there are a lot of times where you're going to be dealing with an organization because of things that you've heard them do, things that they are involved in, and those things stick with a lot of people. Like, why? There's got to be more reason than just they sell this one thing. Lots of people do that,
and they might not know it at first, but psychologically, it's still like in their head, like, oh wow, Healey does this or Paymall Broadcasting does that. They sponsor my little kid's baseball team, or they come and show up for the veterans. My dad was a veteran, or something like that. They don't know it at the time, but psychologically they understand those small little things you do in their local community that have changed their lives or given their kid a better chance at something. So I think that small niche town, I think the Hudson Valley is a perfect example for the whole country and how it works. And it's not a big city. It is growing, but it still has that small town feel, which is awesome.
but they can tell while you're doing it.
Yes.
I don't know what it is, but there's something that people can tell. Are you doing it only for the purpose of whatever it is?
Authenticity.
When somebody calls me and they need a car and I help them with it top to bottom and I just make it super, super easy, that's a really important thing for me. I think it's just personally, like anybody I do business with, I want it to be the best they ever could, the best experience that they could ever have. And then they know that I'm doing it not because of any other reason than it's just ingrained in me. You've trusted me to do this. I want to make sure it's perfect. Yeah. And now they're obligated to say, well, why wouldn't I want my friend or family member to also be involved in that?
It's a comfort level too. They're like, wow, I trust James with anything I give him, and I know that person can be treated, because I want that person to have the same experience I did. Because you don't want to have to talk about a bad experience at dinner or something like that. That's always awkward.
Yeah, that's no good.
That's always awkward.
We own 5 cars. 4 of them are from Healey Brothers.
Look at that.
And we own 3 car dealerships, right? So, but I still I go to.
We might have to cut that, Niggy. Okay, I'm kidding.
No, I would say it if they were sitting here. So, but I called John Kerner and I go, John, because John and I have known each other for more than 30 years, and I just called John and say, look, I'm looking for this for my daughter, I'm looking for this for my son, I'm looking for this for my wife, and he goes, great, come on over, and then it's just that easy, and it's
not even like doing business. It's just like a second thought.
Yeah, and that to me, that's what it's like, and that's what it's like. Healey Brothers is omnipresent in the community. Our radio stations are omnipresent in the community. If they, I just got a note from somebody whose wife needs a kidney, and he said to me, "Can you help me get a message out there?" And I'm like, man, of course I'll find a way, but how am I gonna make that work, right? How am I gonna get this kind of a So we're going to do a pro donation,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That little thing goes such a long way, and someone's going to help that man.
Yeah, somebody's going to help that woman, and then other people. That gift of life is interesting. Interesting thing about living in New York. New York is the highest state for needing transplants, and I think it's because of the medical facilities that we have in New York City, in particular, that focus on transplants. But it's one of the lowest for organ donation.
Really? I'm an organ donor if I go, so.
Yeah, I'm an organ donor as well.
So, switching up here, how is radio really impacting and helping a small local business? I know you do a great job for us. We're on your radio stations. We're marketing with you. We get our message out there. You give us great insight on how our messaging should be, not just all about, Healey just has the lowest payment and all that stuff. So we do other things like that. But how do you help, say, the local restaurant or stuff like that? How do those partnerships work, and how do you really promote their brands?
Yeah, so the first thing is, I guess, philosophically, from a marketing standpoint, radio is at the top of the funnel, right? So we're helping people create that brand awareness and that top of mind awareness, so that when they go into and they fall into that funnel to do business with a business in a certain category, they think of Healey Brothers before they think of somebody else, right? So it does a great job on that brand awareness and getting on that mental shopping list. And then radio does a nice job also of keeping in touch with people as they matriculate through that funnel. So as they're going through that consideration sets, making decisions, Healey or whomever are always there along the way. The big deal is, though, getting the messaging right. And you really have to solve for why. So why should somebody come and do business with Healey Brothers? Why should somebody come and do business with any business, right? Why should we buy your products and services versus somebody else's? And a lot of times business owners get trapped inside this little box, and they talk to insiders a lot, right? But everything that we do in marketing and advertising has to do with outsiders. And I think the biggest advantage that we have is we take this outsider's look and get people to realize that if you're standing in front of your competitor's doorway and you're telling every customer that's going to come in why they should go to your store instead of theirs, that's what a radio ad is, right? And then, our business has evolved in that we sell a lot of digital products. We do a lot of other things. So we can deliver the bottom of the funnel marketing as well as the top of the funnel marketing. But as long as we can keep the message consistent, as long as we can keep it truthful and honest and give people good, compelling reasons why to shop, then that's all we can do. Advertising doesn't sell anything, right? You guys do the selling. Our job is to give you the opportunities to sell. And so that's what we do.
We also have to deliver on that message when they come to us. That's the biggest thing. We could say all these why buys, why we're so great, and or restaurants why they're so great, or their food's so great. But that establishment, that business, if they don't deliver on it, then it kind of just goes all out the door.
Well, there's that marketing bridge, It's what we say versus what we do. And one of the great stories I had with one of your competitors years ago when I was just selling radio, he tells me how he wants to do an ad for his service department and how his service is highly ranked, high customer service, blah, blah, blah. He's got great service writers, or service manager, right? And I'm listening to him, and I said, geez, when did you make this change? And he said, what do you mean? I said, you have the worst reputation for service anywhere. You don't want to say that ad, right? We're not going to run that ad. And he and I had a big argument. I mean, we're still friends today, and he still does business with us, but I think you have to be truthful when you're talking to somebody and saying, look, you really can't say that if it's not going to be the case. Right.
I know you definitely strive on that here. The message we put out there.
Oh, we better follow it.
He's always creating social media videos, and the team's creating videos on how we operate. And if we don't stand by it, it's just a bunch of BS, to be honest. So.
Yeah.
Well, we throw the opportunity away, right?
Yeah.
So like the advertising creates an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
That opportunity falls in our lap, and what do we do with it? And we can squander it, or we can make it a lifetime of business.
Well, one of the greatest misnomers that I've heard is when somebody says to me, well, word of mouth is our best advertising, right? And so the definition of advertising, as you know, is the paid use of a controlled message to elicit a response. That's the clinical definition of advertising. And so word of mouth is not, right? It's not the paid use of a controlled message. Therefore, it's not advertising. It's marketing, but it's not advertising. And so today with social media, word of mouth will kill you. Like,
oh, yeah.
If you have, it used to be in the old days, being an old man, when we talked about, a happy referral, one happy customer, usually led to one happy referral. And one angry customer was like 10 angry referrals, right? They would tell 10 of their friends that, this bad thing happened to me at the store. In social media, all of a sudden there's 1,000 followers that are learning that your oil change guy left a dirt mark on the seat or something, right? It's horrible. And so it's really very difficult. And all of our businesses are facing it. If you can't control that messaging, if you can't control, what your employees are doing and how they're interacting with customers, before you know it, it happened to Bud Light. Before you know it, you're canceled and you had nothing to do with it. Yeah. Right. And that dramatically.
Yeah, it's scary. And I think that the biggest thing is when those do happen, mistakes do happen, is you answer the bell right away.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
There's no better man that does that. If there's a bad review or something, we own it, we jump on it, and
there's usually a solution.
Yeah.
And sometimes most likely it's just a call for help.
Yeah.
And owning it is the key, right? Yeah.
And doing it yourself too. He doesn't pawn off. He calls the no problem.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's a great way to answer the bell.
Yeah.
So going here, say what's your best story for a local business that you've helped, that you've had at Pamela?
I've had.
I'm sure there's been a lot of new businesses that started, small businesses.
I've had a lot of great experiences with local businesses. I would say next to the Healey Brothers, right?
He's swindling us for next year already, 2026.
I would say next to the Healey Brothers partnership, there was a business called Mr. Shed, and they were selling like 100 sheds a month, or 100 sheds a year rather, and two families were like part of the Mr. Shed family there. And I came up with this Jerky Boys kind of character called Mr. Shed, and it was like, Mr. Shed. Like, because if you want to buy a shed, who do you buy it from? You buy it from Mr. Shed, right? And they were selling like 600 sheds a year after we started doing that advertising. But There's been a lot of them. You know, I was involved. That Mill Spa Furniture, the sturdy, elegant, comfortable, timeless stuff came from us. That I just have been involved. I've been doing it for a long time. So,
And the meaning of helping that small business, say like a small restaurant or something like that's got to feel so good.
so what I took very seriously, and I hope that everybody that works for me takes very seriously, is that if the failure of a business leads to the failure of a family. And so our job is, if they ask us to help them with their marketing and advertising, we genuinely have to help them with their marketing and advertising. And then the market is so small that if you're not a person of integrity, if you're not a person of your word, if you're not willing to see somebody in the CVS or in the supermarket, then don't sell them it, right? If what we do isn't going to work, we either have to work really hard to make it work or not sell it to them. And having that level, I think, of integrity has helped us, move forward. But understanding that, there's a lot riding on the success of Healey Brothers. There's a lot riding on the success of a lot of businesses. There's a lot of employees. You have a lot of employees. Just think about the ripple effects of that.
650 plus. So it's a lot going on it.
Yeah. That's a lot of mortgages, a lot of car loans, a lot of education. Like, there's so much riding on that.
A lot of families that are fed.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody
What were you gonna say?
recognizes the responsibility of that.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right.
that's one of the things, when we hire somebody, or as we counsel them as they're going through our program, like, we take that. It's not just 650 employees. I look at, we have 70 people in this building, but that's 70 people. A lot of them are married or with a significant other, have children, and that 70 might be 340. And you have to take that responsibility. If we don't run this business well, if we don't look at all of these things every day, I can't stomach if there was a potential of a failure in any way, and that could be just failing that person by not getting them better and allowing them to make money for their family. That's really important to us as an organization.
Oh,
it's 'cause
we take pride in it.
It's not just them. It's everyone.
I know my dad, every year when he hears that employee, that uptick, and he just so much pride and so much love for it, saying like, we're doing something right here where more people want to be a part of it.
Right.
And it goes a long way. You're helping that many families and that many people. But they're also doing a great job. They understand how important that is to do a great job here. And there's not one employee at any of the facilities that we wouldn't stand by and help support and help them grow as a person and in their career. So.
Yeah. Well, you guys do it in a great way and have for a long, long time. So.
Yeah. What were we gonna say?
I was going to say, you mentioned Mill Spa, and I obviously know they've been advertising for a long time.
Yep.
And the only reason I know about them in a small town like Walden is because they've been advertising for so long.
Right.
But is there a counseling session that you have to do with a lot of these small businesses? Because I can recognize that advertising isn't inexpensive, but it's necessary. And a lot of small businesses may elect to advertise and run whatever period of time it is, and they think that there's going to be this massive run as soon as they start spending some money, and it takes a really long time to get that name out there. How do you counsel them to say this isn't a 2-month run? Like, if you really want what you want, it's going to take this. Is there counseling involved to get them to do longer?
Yeah, it's a lot of conversation, and it takes a lot of discipline on our part to resist just taking their money. You really have to kind of fight through that. So a great example is one of your clients at Ford, kid named Steve Santini. So Steve owns Santini Landscaping, and so Steve came to me when he had a pickup truck and an idea and said, what do you think I should do? And so I started him on this advertising thing and said, look, Steve, it's going to take a little time and you're going to build your business. Well, now he's got an army that goes out there.
Oh, he's pretty big.
And he does our lawn and parking lot down here at the radio station. I take him everywhere we go. I happen to love the kid, but I know his parents from Marlboro and all that stuff. But he's a great business mind, does a great job. I know that he's one of your best customers because
I saw his name, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, coming up on the CRM for getting some new vehicles.
Yeah, I was up with is it Chio up in Ford in Poughkeepsie, and we were getting an Explorer for my daughter Eliza, and so I'm in his office, and we're talking, and he goes, "Do you know Steve Santini?" And I said, "Yeah." So he texted Steve, and Steve said, "Make sure you take good care of him. He's a good friend of mine." And I was like, "Thanks, Steve." Hopefully my deal just got better.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I think your deal is pretty good there with the JK effect.
I think you're right. Yeah. And actually, the truth of the matter is, and this should be for every customer. I don't even ask. Like I say that I say, so what do you think? And he goes, all right, this is what it's going to be. And I say, thank you. Right. So, but I think
Trust.
everybody should deal like that. That's a good deal is the state of the mind. Right. And if you believe you had a good deal, you have a good deal.
Yep.
If you don't, then you don't.
It's all about how you're treated, how we take care of you, and the customer service. Also, after the fact, there's always issues too. It's how you come to the bell when if there's an issue, say after you purchase a car or something like that.
I love to pretend there's never an issue, but it's
But
inevitable.
I think that's why we're so successful as well.
Yeah. But I think my point is to close the point on Santini is that, advertising does take time. But just like I remember talking to your dad about, is the Discount King the right way to position the business so many years ago?
Yeah,
right.
That was what, 20 years ago?
More than that.
More than that, yeah. Yeah. In fact, we were talking about it on a golf course in a golf tournament together. It was a long, long time ago. So
It's 30 years ago.
yeah, it was a long time.
I wasn't even alive yet, probably.
You may
I
not.
don't think you were.
Yeah, we were.
I want to bring back the
we were
the
still
punch-
down-
The only reason I know about it is I saw the clippings, and that was before. I mean, I that was way
It was-
before.
it was good
even
drawing.
me, but I saw it.
the
was-
retro
yeah,
the retro Healey Brothers.
Discount King.
So I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt. finish
No,
your
but
point.
that's the idea, is that it does take time, and you build equity in the marketplace, and then certain things, Fresh for Less, Give Adams a Try is something that we started.
And they're a booming business.
It's a booming business, right? But I was the one to talk Don Adams into starting doing his own commercials on the radio, and then we got Pat Adams involved because Don was really just a very modest guy and quickly turned it over to Pat. Yeah. But that was the idea of
And
building
that's being authentic too. When people actually hear the voice of ownership, they feel like they're hearing the owner speak actually. So it's like it's very important.
and that is a really big deal. And we do a lot of business with a lot of personal injury attorneys and a lot of think about I started doing a lot of business with Marty Ruttberg, and one of the things with Marty in particular is that I thought that a personal injury attorney is kind of like a superhero, right? Because you get somebody that was injured in an accident or injured due to somebody's carelessness or negligence, and then here comes this guy to help them get recovery, to get, remuneration. It's the law that says that they should be able to get remuneration, and, here's the guy that does that. And that's why we started telling the stories about a kid who got injured on a playground or a kid. And then that resonates inside the community, and then the stories build and the business builds and the business grows. And you can do that. And advertising, and this is the great thing about advertising, is that there are no rules, right? There are certain guidelines, but the science is the art, right? So advertising is kind of like, let's give this a shot and see how we work it, and we put enough positive elements together.
There's always testing and failing. We failed at some things, but if you're not testing and innovating, you're just dying. So
that's exactly right. You have to expand, and that's part of the leadership role that we have.
So one thing here, if you had to give one piece of advice to an entrepreneur, like say Santini, what would you say to them? They're starting a new business.
I don't know that I can only do one piece.
Well, whatever you got top of mind.
So 93% of the businesses that start today will fail inside 5 years because they're undercapitalized. So pay attention to your money. How you do your business is going to be important, but make sure you have the funding, and then make sure you have the ability to market it. Because no matter how great your product is, no matter how great your service is, if you can't advertise it in some way, then you're never going to get people to do business with you. That is, like I say to people sometimes, I'm going to have a dinner party at my house on Friday night. Are you coming? Only if I invite you, right? And that's what advertising is. Advertising in any form is the invitation to come in to do business with us, right? And different advertising works in different ways. I happen to be a big fan of radio. I happen to be a big fan of audio. I think radio and television are great, even still, with all of the fragmentation that you're seeing inside both those forms of media. But you have to advertise. You have to ask people to come in here. And so many businesses don't have enough money when they start up, and they don't advertise. They'll say, well, I don't have any money to advertise. Well, then shut the door now. Go work for somebody who does what you do, save your money, and try it again.
I heard the rule of 7. I don't know if this is true, but you have to hear an advertisement 7 times and also somewhat be in the market for that product for that advertisement to actually get you to the finish line. I don't know if I made that up. I heard that. I feel
Sounds good.
You know, but you know, like with us, like we have to advertise so long because if the average person's only buying every 3 or 4 years,
our buying cycle's long.
you know, they hear us 14,000 times before they're ready to buy. But at some point in time, but it's like small businesses, do you have to hear it? You have to hear it a number of times before it actually resonates and actually gets locked into memory, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so statistically, 2 to 3% of the market is going to be in the market for anybody's product or service at any given time. So that's good to be continually advertising because people are constantly coming into the market, going out of the market, coming into the market, going out of it. And then as you look at the buying funnel, people matriculate through it at their own pace. So if I wreck my car this afternoon, I'm going to be urgently needing a car, soon. But if I don't, I might think, geez, I'd like to get a new truck as the winter's coming, or whatever the reason is, right? You start to think each buying product has its own cycle, has its own length of time. In advertising, it's generally the rule of 3. You'll hear an ad 3 times, and then it'll start to break through, right? It could be 7 today because of all of the distractions that you have. It's definitely hard to pin down the consumer. It's definitely hard, and that's why the consistency of the message.
Well, and creating a strong brand too with that message. You have to create a strong brand. I think one thing we've done is when you think car, you do think Healey. Yeah. I would say a large part of our population in the Hudson Valley market is when they think car, they do understand, oh yeah, Healey sells car. Let me see what they have at least.
Right.
Kind of a thing. So you're making that recognition.
But the other smart thing that you guys do is that you're constantly out there, right? So if you take one of the biggest businesses in the world and you think, who sells the most hamburgers in the world? It's going to be McDonald's, right? But then if you ask a study and say, who sells the worst hamburgers in the world? It's also going to be McDonald's, right? So the best and the most don't necessarily have to align, right? But the lesson that you learn in advertising from somebody like McDonald's is they advertise every day, right? They advertise every day, and they advertise specifically for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and for late night, right? They are a marketing machine because they know right this minute somebody's hungry, and I want them to remember me.
Now I'm hungry.
Instead of Burger King, or
I
remember
love
me
McDonald's.
instead. Yeah. Can't live without that filet of fish.
Oh, no, not the filet of fish, but I love it. I love my
I don't think you're old
McDonald's.
enough to love the filet of fish.
I just came out of Lent, so I had to deal with the
So-
filet of fish.
So I do want to say one thing before we end up here.
Okay.
We noticed that you got the top 20 leader award in radio. Tell us a little bit about that. I saw it was on LinkedIn. That's pretty impressive. So tell us a little bit about that, and congratulations as well.
Thank you. It's embarrassing to be recognized like that, to be candid with you. So I've been doing it for a long time. So I'm recognized by a lot of people in the industry as a pretty good leader. I was nominated by a couple people who work for me, which is always a great honor to have that happen. And I have been remarkably consistent through my career. So when I was a market manager, I won Market Manager of the Year a couple times. And there's certain pursuits of this business that I follow pretty consistently. Being live and local, dealing with a high degree of integrity, giving back to the community, all of those partnerships that I push forward. And then I think genuinely caring for the people that work for us and trying to help them advance, trying to move people on. I always look at the coaching trees in professional sports and think, how great would it be to be one of those great leaders that had a good, root system of people that were out running it. And then lo and behold, here I have a whole bunch of people that have worked for me over the years that are out running media companies, running other kinds of businesses, and I'm very proud of that. So I am proud of the way that I lead, but it's embarrassing to be recognized by that because that's not why I do.
Well, you should be. That's some honor for a top 20 leader.
I think
it's very impressive, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
So closing up here, what's in the future for Mr. Benfer and for Pamela Broadcasting?
Well, I'm having a blast being a local radio guy. I worked for a couple big corporations and I didn't like it. I don't like working for I just don't like working in that model. I like being live, local, involved in the community, and I'll spend as much time in Rutland, Vermont, sitting with business owners as I do in Poughkeepsie or as I do in Albany or Glens Falls. I love the business. As we were talking about different kind of businesses before we started recording, I love every kind of business. I love watching how people make money, how they thrive and how they survive.
How they understand the consumer, which is huge for you as well.
Yeah, it really is very fascinating. Plus, the more I can understand it, the better advice I can give on how to attract people into your
And help
business.
them with their message as well.
Yeah, I can really help you. I can really help better with that. So the future for our business is that, we're looking to expand. We're looking at radio station groups. I'm looking at some bigger markets and some smaller markets, and just trying to find ways to expand and continue to grow.
Growing is surviving.
Growing or going, that's what they say.
Well, I appreciate, James. You got anything else to
I
close
was
up?
just going to say, if you're a business, small business, medium business, or big business, you better get a hold of Chuck to keep your business thriving.
Yeah. Chuck will find you anyways. He's got his feet on the ground. He'll come out there and find you.
Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, hit that subscribe button, and follow us at Healey Brothers on all social platforms.